And there we are. I'm live with Liam Mucklow from the Golf Lab. Very, very excited about this one. If anyone follows you or has checked out your information, or if you haven't checked it out, please do so. But if you have, you know that you do some very, very cool stuff up there. And happy to have you on. So thanks for
Yeah,
coming on.
thank you. Appreciate the invite. Trying to keep boosting the Canadian content out there.
Yeah, I was as I took, Doug was on last week, and I was meant texting him this morning, and I said, Liam's coming on. What do you want me to ask him? You got any fun stories that I can bring up? And he didn't, or he said none that would be family friendly. But I'm like, it's so the Calx has been on. Seem to have a
Yeah,
connection with all the Canadian Teacher of the Years. So Calx has been on, Doug's been on, now you've been on.
yeah,
And Martin, Chuck, I guess you guys kicked him out of Canada, and we took him in. So I
yeah.
guess you could still consider Martin a Canadian. And obviously, Jason Zubek's been on, Sasha's been on. So you guys are doing some great stuff up there, even though it's anyone who thought you had to be in a very warm weather climate to advance yourself in golf, you guys are
Uh,
proving that wrong.
sometimes it's easier to push the envelope when you're buried in snow for 6 months, thinking about what you would do if you were able to go outside.
Well, I tell you, I grew up in Michigan, and I do remember that the passion to get out and play golf after you've been cooped up for 9 months
Oh
is,
yeah.
is very, very strong. It's like
hmm
shaking up a champagne bottle and popping the cork. Everything, you just cannot wait to get outside. You don't. As soon as it's warm enough that the ground's not frozen, you're ready to go.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. April's a busy month up there. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
a busy one if you're working in a pro shop. You just go from nothing to long, long days all day, every day.
So, but before we jump into the scientific aspect of what you do, I wanted to touch on let's say somebody's down here in the States, and
Yep.
they're not a golf junkie, so that maybe they're not as familiar with what you do and who you are. So I just want to touch on that because you come from a very extensive background. You played, you're a long drive, you traveled, you're in the scientific side. You started Golf Lab, 2000? It's what is that? 15,
Uh,
almost 15
yeah.
years ago.
Yeah,
So
2009.
I guess
Crazy.
we'll just start very briefly in the beginning and then work up into what you're doing now.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously, started playing. I was pretty lucky. I always hit the ball pretty far, farther than most. And that pretty early on, actually, through getting to know Jason Zubak, who was about an hour and a half away from where I grew up, and we had a mutual connection, hooked us up, and he gave me my first low lofted driver, actually made a recommendation on my behalf to get me into my first international long drive championship. And it started to open some doors on the equipment side. And then also, early exposure to things like launch monitors and motion capture, long before people even knew that kind of stuff existed. I remember
Hmm.
hitting on the first Titleist, was it the TPM? I think it was called Titleist Performance Monitor or something like it. It looked like a gigantic UFO. The thing was freaking massive and cumbersome and all that. But it was the first time I'd ever seen a spin rate. And that, like, if you asked me back then, I had no idea what a golf ball spun at, should spin at, or anything. And I get to hit a couple balls, and they're telling me that I'm launching it at 16 degrees with 1700 spin, and I'm like, okay. I have, I
Whatever
literally
that
had,
means.
had
Okay,
had
great.
no clue, and they're like, "Wow, that's really good." I was like, "Okay, cool, all right, anyway, whatever, thanks." Transitioned out of the long drive world into tournament golf, and spent a few years over based in South Korea and playing all over there, and then you know, I think probably pretty typical. Those who can do, those who can't teach. So that had kind of run its course, and was tired of being broke and living tournament to tournament and
Hmm.
all that fun stuff. So I moved back to Canada. Um, went out to Ontario, and was working at a place called the Golf Institute of Bondhead, which was, at the time the most advanced place out there. It was 2008, and we had a TrackMan, and we had a K-Vest, and we had a motion reality system. It's like a precursor to Gears. Got a chance to work under another national award winner up in Canada, Bruce McCarroll, and just kind of learn a little bit about the basics of that business. And the way things went, I ended up having the opportunity to actually to get a head professional job, while I was still in my 20s at a premier resort course just north of Toronto called Taboo. And, it was great because even though they wanted me as a head pro, it was really just to teach.
Hmm.
So it was a fit there, but it also, in taking that position, I also knew that, come October 1st, I'm absolutely out of work. They shut down for the season and that's that. So, combination of, taking that job, getting married, buying a house, having a kid, and that, like I can't not be able to work and I have to start something. So, ended up starting the first golf lab, which was some space that I sublet from the squash club in my hometown. And, couldn't afford a TrackMan, I bought a couple Flight Scope Kudus, put them in, bought a TV, had old DV cameras, literally pulled the TV out of our living room to have a second TV in there. I ended up like writing some super basic software, but what it allowed like the fitness club staff, when they walked in and they flicked on the light switch, that would automatically, turn on the computers, which were wired into the power. And then, this pretty simple macro would open up all of the software. So V1 would open up, Flight Scope would open up, and people were able to pay a monthly fee so they could just go in and hit balls on the technology and see what their swing looked like on video and get some launch monitor feedback before or after the workout or whatever. So it was in less than 2 weeks, I had like around 60 people paying me $75 a month to hit balls and me not even to be there. And then, we started coaching and club fitting and, all that kind of stuff. And it turned into a good little business, one that was good enough not to go back to work for anyone else really. And, from there, there's different iterations. We developed some software, which was, pretty interesting. It integrated with Flight Scope, which is what we used at the time. And so we sold a bunch of stuff to corporate tournaments. And so if you were playing a corporate tournament at Angus Glen's, like, one of the busiest courses in Toronto, 36 holes, you'd get to the long drive hole, and instead of having a stick in the ground, you'd be hitting balls on a Flight Scope launch monitor. And before you got to your ball, you got an email showing you what your shot was, and we wrote it so your data was coded red or green, good or bad. And if it was red, you could click on the red numbers and it would link through to YouTube videos we made teaching you how to
Wow, that's
improve
very
upon
cool.
that.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, it's pretty neat. So then what we're able to do is like, we put over 40,000 golfers through it in one summer. And so now we've got this huge database of golfers, but it's not that we just know that you golf. We know if you're right or left-handed. We know what your club head speed is. We know what your club path is. We know what your basic shot shape is. So if I wanted to run an anti-slice camp, I just had to run a simple query in the database, and I got 5,000 slicers I'm going to send an email to. So you don't need a very high conversion rate to fill up your camps.
Right. That was it.
So yeah,
Did you have any? Because as you said, it's 2008. It's not like YouTube was booming yet. I mean, it was kind of in still in its
mm-hmm.
infancy, and to be able to link those things. Did you have a background in computer science at all, or electronics, or did you just learn as you go? Like,
No,
here's what I want to do. Let me figure out how to do this.
yeah, that one, yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like you know, I was the person who like in university calculus class, instead of actually learning how to do the calculus, I learned how to write a program that made it look like I cleared the memory on my computer on my calculator. So I could bring my TI-85 with all the stuff I needed to know. So, whatever, different approach, but
Mm-hmm.
so far, it kind of works. Yeah, it's
Was
like,
there there any was it a curiosity itch about the fitting and the technology that you had to scratch that was a fundamental in pushing you in this direction, or was it just
um,
the having the family and now you've got responsibilities and you got to do something to
I mean,
take care of that?
I think there's a little bit of everything going on. I mean, the basic business plan of the golf lab was literally, it was this simple. Like, I used to be pretty good and I got to do cool shit. And
Mm-hmm.
rich dudes like cool shit. So I should give rich guys the opportunity to do cool shit that I got to do because I was good, and I bet they'll like it. literally, like that's as complex as it was.
That's I tell you what, that's very similar to why I did the podcast. Is I got to meet a lot of very cool, very smart and interesting people in my playing career,
Hmm.
and I had given some serious consideration to writing a master's thesis on coaching off
Mm,
of my theory was it's not just swing mechanics, it's the clubs and the fitting and the physics of the clubs, and it's the body and how you train and you eat and you do all these things, and
yeah.
it's how the mind works, and it's the integration. You know, which of those four pillars do you need at any particular time for your game to keep advancing? And I got to
Hmm.
thinking, like, do I want to sit down and really write a book? Everyone I've ever talked to says that was one of the most tedious things they've ever done. And then all of a sudden, here comes along Tim Ferriss and his podcast, and I said,
Yeah.
that's what I want to do. And I said, it's
Nice.
so much easier. And I was scared to death, like most people. I jumped in 5 years ago, roughly.
Okay.
But very the mindset was very similar to yours. Is I know a lot of cool people and have a lot of cool information. Why not get it out to people and showcase the people who either taught me, helped me, told me something,
Yep.
whatever, and
Yeah.
bring them to the masses that more people can learn from it.
Yeah. I mean, that's where I think, yeah, yeah, passion drives a lot of, you know, a lot of the best things, regardless of the industry. You
Mm-hmm.
have to absolutely love it, and you know, you, you do it where you don't think about what the time is that you're putting in, or what your ROI is. You just go and do the best you can and share good information and give people a good experience. You're going to be successful. It doesn't really matter what you do.
Do you? I was talking about this to a friend of mine today. He's actually designing this some of the new Sunday red shoes for
Okay.
Tiger slash TaylorMade, and he had messaged me because I'd sent him videos. I got a new ice bath, and we're just chatting. And he
Yeah.
said, "How's the podcast?" I said, "Look, I've got so much stuff going on." I said, "It's very difficult to get it all done in a day. I wish I had another 12 hours, but I have to learn how to." Uh, Basically stay disciplined to the time frames I put in, because it's very easy for me to get off track when I'm doing some homework on you and watching your videos, and I watch another one, I get off on another tangent. Pretty soon I'm out in the middle of nowhere down this
Yeah.
hole, and it's like, oh shit, I don't have the time to do that. But I love doing those things. Do you find with all the things that you're involved in, and the technological aspect, which is changing so rapidly, that it's easier for you to drift into something that or get lost in something, and pretty soon you're like, oh shit, I got to get back to doing this because this is my business, and I got to make sure the business does well, or so I can continue to do
Yeah,
what
I
I'm
mean
doing.
it's hard to prioritize things for sure. Like I think the biggest challenge is, if we're sitting around, talking as a group, there might be 10 different things we want to research and trying to figure out, well, like, okay, well, what's the one that we're actually going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it also, I think what's been a lot of fun about, the way things have worked out is that, we have found ways that, we feel like our research, in addition to just, like helping the community, providing new information, new approach to game improvement, we also have been able to monetize it, and so it does feed into our education programs and stuff. So that's, I don't, if it didn't, I don't think we'd be able to put as much time as we do. Like there's literally over 1,000 hours, man hours logged in this last grip pressure study. Like it's a
Wow.
tremendous amount of work. Um, I think we started the research. I was back, when the golf lab was just getting going. Um, I was also had been accepted to go and do my master's, at McMaster University, and wanted to learn more about motor learning.
Mm-hmm.
But then in the business and family and all that stuff, well, going back to school and putting yourself in a big hole doesn't always really work out. So the research initially came out of, I guess, like, okay, well, if I can't, if I'm not able to go and do my master's and write a thesis or any of that kind of stuff, I guess I'm just going to make my own. I'll make it
Mm-hmm.
my own school in the real world kind of thing. And that was the very first one that we did and published. It was neat because it was actually about like how humans would engage with a launch monitor. And so we did this double blind study where one group of people were allowed to, they would just come into the lab and practice however they practice and have 19 data points up on at that time. Now we've moved into, the TrackMan phase of our business. And, I was just looking at it going, man, these people are in such a cool place that we built them. They're engaged, they're spending their money, they're spending their time, and I'm pretty damn sure they are not getting better. Because, like you put up 19 data points on the screen, you understand one of them well, say carry distance.
Yeah.
Everything else you sort of kind of understand maybe, but not really, and how it all fits together. You're just going to get distracted and you're not actually, going to get better. The other group of people, they were only allowed to look at two data points. And the two data points that they were allowed to see was swing direction and launch direction. So the basic premise, and I just vetted this through other early adopters of technology in the industry. So it's like, well, we didn't use club path because technically there's an infinite number of club paths for every swing direction. For those people that are out there that aren't familiar, swing direction is defined by TrackMan as the horizontal direction of travel, the center of geometry of the golf club at its lowest point of the swing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's defined as like, there's one of these. And, and just vetting it through some of these other top instructors, we kind of agreed that like, you don't feel a club path, you feel a swing direction. Right. So if I move the ball back, I can have the same swing direction, but different club path and vice versa. And so the concept was like the best golfers are the best problem solvers. So we're going to have these people train and react where they get feedback that we felt was the closest match to what they would get outside. So as soon as you get outside and you're away from all the tech, you've got what? You've got your feel and you've got your eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So you can basically, okay, how did my swing feel and what direction did it start? We built this impact model. So, if you were coming in and say, okay, what kind of shot do you want to hit? You'd say, okay, you want to hit it straight. And then, we'd capture a baseline of 10 swings with your 7-iron. And, we'd take a look at what your angle of attack was and what your vertical swing plane was. And from there, we would program like, okay, if you can have a swing direction of 3.2 degrees left and a start direction of 0, that's straight. And then you had two things to bounce back and forth and chase. And, at the end, at the end of the study, so we went back to reevaluate. It was less about like, did you actually, change your swing, but more, were you better at predicting what those values were? Right. So that way, at least like when you make a bad swing on course, are you able to accurately identify the issue? Because if you accurately identify the issue, you're going to have a much better chance of fixing it faster, performing better, amortized over 18 holes. And, the difference between the two groups was absolutely staggering. And so that's where, that was sort of the start of, a lot of it was, in addition to having people come in the lab and, give them technical information, a big part of coaching is about helping them understand what information should I actually consume, what shouldn't I consume, putting people on a data diet, which I think is always interesting because I found, a lot of times if people look at the body of work of the golf lab or they have this reputation, they come in or fly in and, they're like, hey, like, how come you only let me see two pieces of data? Having a totally different expectation than what they're actually getting. So it's kind of interesting, just going through that.
I had Brian Gathright was on a couple of years ago, and Brian, it was in Texas. I think he was a top 100 for a long. I think he's somewhat getting closer to retirement, but he's a very good teacher. He ran the Harvey Penick School for many, many years when Mr. Penick was still alive, and he was telling the story on the show that he remembered when video was coming out and becoming very popular, the technology of the time. And he said in it, when he was talking to Mr. Penick about it, he said, Brian, this is going to be more intriguing for us as coaches than it really is for the students. They're going to see a lot of wow in it, but we're going to see a lot of things that we weren't able to see before. So it's going to blow a lot of coaches away, even more so than it is the students. they're going to have a lot of wow factor in it, but we're going to get a lot more out of it probably than they will, because they
Hmm.
don't know what they're looking at. They don't know what to look for. And it seems
Right.
like even though technology is advanced, the fundamentals are very similar. Student gets too much information but data diet.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I had a student come to me. This was a couple of years ago. He worked in he was something for the state attorney's office where he had to read briefs. So he was a speed reader. And
Mm.
he came to me and I said, well, what's the problem? He said, I've read too many golf instructional books. I have way too many things in my head and I've got to narrow it down. Because at that time I was doing, we talked in the pre-show, I was doing a lot of fitting and I was doing a lot of like nonstop coaching, and I could tell where somebody hit the ball in the face. I'm not saying I had some magic power. You would know that. You do that enough.
Yeah.
You're around it. You
Sure.
start to identify the swing and the noise and what you're looking for and what they shouldn't be doing and should. But I would tell him, he goes, can you do that every time? I said, well, yeah, that's what I do. So he was impressed enough that when he did have that problem, he came to me and we simplified it. And once he figured out how to keep it very simple, got his
Hmm.
2 or 3 handicap back, and then he was on his way. And he
Yeah.
might call me once a year to come back.
Yeah.
But he had to go through that, the same way that somebody who's maybe struggling with their weight and their health has to go through a diet. And I think what you called it, data diet, is a
Oh,
perfect term. So Liam we're going to coin that right now, data diet. So when you hear it
yeah.
next year and it's viral, you know where you heard it first.
Yeah. It's, I got a good buddy of mine, which of course I'll name drop, Chris Payton. That's for you. I lent him one of my launch monitors. He lives down the street from me. He's another Canadian living down in Louisiana. And we get along really well. He's like, "Yeah, man, okay, I'm ready. I'm gonna get serious. Like, I'm gonna get better." I'm like, "Okay, well, like, do you want to get better? Or do you want to change your backswing?" Well, both. I'm like, oh, dude, it still doesn't work that way. Anyway, whatever. I lent him a launch monitor that I was testing out, and I'm like, "Yeah, here, go ahead." He's got a net return in the backyard, and he was looking at his club path or something like that, and then I get a text message from him probably an hour later, and he's showing me his broken TV screen in his cabana because he was so worried about his club path. He toe shanked it and banked off the house and into the TV. I'm like, well, how was the club path? Club path is good. So yeah, it's tough. I mean, like one of the thing that's so interesting, I guess, and really was one of my biggest challenges, I think, early on in my coaching career is the nature of clients that we attracted, especially at our Toronto location, are, people that typically deal with data or high volume of information, are very successful. And so they want to consume it all.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But there's a difference between, say consumption and understanding and, applying it and performing. And so it's led to a lot of the ways we even structure our programming, so like you go in, our branding at all of our golf labs around the world is like, well, we've got training programs and we've got coaching programs. Oh, how come you don't sell lessons? I was like, oh, well, would you ever take an exercise lesson? No. It's like, would you hire a personal trainer? Yeah, probably. Like, yeah, you're not going to take an exercise lesson because you know how to exercise. You just don't like doing it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hire a personal trainer to keep you accountable and hit your goals. So, like in our world, training programs are about skill development. Coaching programs are about lower handicap. So there's a regular conversation with a potential new client that comes in and be like, yeah, I'm like, we're going to fix my slice and then I'm going to break 80. I'm like, whoa, 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 hang on. Which one do you want? Because I'm highly confident we can get to either. But what happens if we fix your slice and you still start up the left-hand side of the fairway because that's what you've done your whole life, and now you have a smooth draw that goes 10 yards farther in the trees and you shoot higher? Like, well, what do you mean? Well, that wouldn't happen. I'm like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
there's a pretty good chance it might. Or what if we got you actually down where your scoring average was 77, but you still play a fade? And, you just watch gears start grinding and people are like, oh, no, but I can't. I don't know. It's like, look, it's just figure out what you want, and then we can help you get there. But
Mm-hmm.
when I take a look at the way things are at say like traditional academies, it's this transactional exchange of time and money. And I'm not saying it doesn't work, and I'm not trying to throw other academies under the bus, but what I think is so interesting about the framework that we've created is right from the onset, it puts the student and the coach on the same page with the same goal. You know, and when I look at that student coach relationship, I think the only time it ever breaks down is when on either side someone's expectations aren't met. And like just the structure of knowing like, okay, I'm going to enter this training program, and I've got 8 training sessions with my coach, and then at the end I'm going to go through an exit test, right? And when you went through your baseline test, you were assigned a key performance indicator, and so every interaction for the golfer and the coach is revolved around improving that KPI. And we don't care how the coaches do it. At the end of the day, that's what's going to determine if you're successful or not.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as our students are hitting their KPIs, coaches, completely free. So not everyone has to teach the same methodology or, the same process or the same grip. So it's created like this interesting architecture that allows coaches to be, unique, I guess,
Well, I would say
as
it
long as
probably,
they're better.
yeah, more closely matches the reality because, as you mentioned, I've been around and I don't wouldn't say I've been involved, but I've been around and witnessed and experienced and have enough connections to enough academies. Even going back to when I worked at Sea Pines and we would do the clinics, we'd have a morning clinic and an afternoon clinic for the whoever was in town, and they could sign up. And I mean, you're a 20-some-year-old assistant, so I mean that's source of income.
Yeah.
But the way they were structured, even years ago, was you would teach this and this and this. Where now it's well, you don't have to teach that, but let's because that doesn't necessarily work on a golf course. Is when it lies around the evening, you have wind, you have all the sand and water and all these other variables. It's like person's going to do what they need to do to get the ball to go where they need to go. And if a coach
Mhm.
can get them to do that repeatedly, uh, like some people will come to me and say, well, I want to hit the ball more consistent. I say, okay, tell me what more consistent means to you, because it might
Oh,
mean something different to me. And, you just got
absolutely.
to keep, as a young assistant, when you learn a little bit, you think you know a lot. And then you realize that the X's and O's of the swing, as that changes over time, or maybe some are the same, then it's how you handle the individual, how you extract information. There's so much more involved than just do this in your swing to hit
Oh,
it straight or a
yeah.
draw or a fade or whatever you want.
I would say whenever I'm training our coaches and stuff, I would say like, look, for the most part, you got to ask a golfer the same question 3 times before you're going to get the honest answer. You know,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, consistency is that's always an interesting one. I find one of the questions I find myself asking golfers a lot now as we're, going through these initial discussions to help figure out like, how do we get on the same page? Like, we know we can help you. We just need you to commit to something achievable. It's like, well, do you want to get different or do you want to get better? And that's a really awkward question for most people because I think they have this notion different is better, and
Mm-hmm.
it's like, it's your challenging this belief system that they've created. Like, whoa, wait a minute, they're not the same thing. Like, no, they're not the same thing. I mean, again, you go back to some of these very, very early, I guess, I don't know if it's a business concept or ideas. Got this little place inside the squash club. Of course, it's got a fitness center and stuff right there too. And I'm also kind of going like, okay, well, look, like people aren't very good listeners for the most part,
Mm-hmm. And
especially
it's
not the
worse
people.
today.
Yeah, well, and especially the people that have the disposable time and money to take golf lessons. Odds are they spend a lot more of their day telling people what to do than listening to people telling them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, okay, so the person's probably not going to be a very good listener. Probably not going to practice very much. But if I'm in the fitness center, this is great because I can walk over here to the gym and I can help them get a little bit stronger, give them a little bit better balance. If the person's got a little better balance, is a little stronger in the same shit golf swing, they're still going to get more out of it, and they're going to get better. And if they get better, they keep paying me. And if they keep paying me, then I can go on vacation and like get out of the snow for a couple of weeks. So this is great.
In today's technological era, where they can get on Instagram and YouTube and so easily for them to drift away from maybe what you or your staff are trying to get them to do. And how do you get someone, especially who is such a high driver to accomplish something? How do you get them to commit when they start to get down that path of basically maybe unwinding a little bit of what they're comfortable with, and now they're a little bit uncomfortable and they're very uneasy, maybe a little bit anxiety ridden. How do you get them to commit to sticking with you guys and what you're trying to get them to do, and not go off on some tangent and unravel what the work that you put in already?
Well, I mean, I think it starts from the very first interaction of like having the dialogue with them of like, okay, so you're trying to get better or different, and that immediately kind of flips the script from probably anyone else they've ever talked to,
Mm-hmm.
or however different people within the organization articulate stuff like, like my buddy Chris will be like, hey, I've been at this a while, man. Still haven't seen anyone hit it with a backswing. Just saying. So a lot of it is, will come through establishing a trusted relationship early on. Um, one of the other things I find myself saying to people is like, look, you came here with the hope of changing performance, right? So performance is the number on your scorecard at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe wholeheartedly that we're not going to change your performance unless we change your behavior. So that means like physically doing something different, not just thinking something different. And particularly with adults, you think about how hard it is to induce a behavioral change in someone. We're only going to change behavior if we change perception, right? So it all starts there, and that's where, from opening discussions to initial student interviews to our baseline testing process, is putting these golfers through an experience that they've never been through. And what's interesting is even something like when we're going through TPI screens with people, and whatever the screen is, but you're like, okay, yeah, like let's see, how's your trail shoulder external rotate? Oh, you've got 70 degrees. You're like, yeah, chicken wing, right? I'm like, yeah. Like, okay, well, look, here's how it works, and so you just can't physically do it. Well, but I gotta have my trail forearm vertical at the top of the backswing. I saw it on social media. I'm like, well, you can't. So, you know, you can either try and manipulate and impinge your shoulder joint to a point where it's completely non-functional. We could recommend a local physical professional who can help increase your external range of motion, and then you can look the way you want to look. Or if you just want to hit draws, we can probably drop your right foot back like 5 inches, and you can just do your thing and hit some smooth draws. Up to you. I don't, whatever. What do you want to do?
What path do you want to go down?
Yeah. What do you want to do? I mean, I think the other thing that's also, interesting in the golf space is like, if there's golfers out there listening, I'm probably going to come across as one of the most cynical golf coaches in the world, but it might be why it's effective. Because like the other thing I think is important that we assume as coaches is, like if you start online lessons, live lessons, whatever, if we started working together, I am automatically going to assume that every single time that we get together, you are in physically worse condition than you were at the previous session. Like you said, you're 52, I'm 44. I am in a constant state of physical decay right
Mm-hmm.
now. I'm in the gym trying to slow down
Slow it
that
down, yeah.
decay, but this is the reality we're dealing with the majority of our clients. So like, let's not dance around it. Let's be honest and let's accept it. And then
Yeah,
when
that's
we
very
accept it, we
interesting.
can make better decisions. Yeah, like what? I mean, I'm not saying it never happens, but I can count on one hand the number of times I've worked with a person for long term and they were in better shape at 55 than they were at 50.
Mm-hmm.
Just, so like, what are we doing?
You brought up a very interesting point about perception, because I have had more than once, more than a few times, where I will ask a student when they address a ball, if they're struggling. Not this, of course, is assuming that their swing is somewhat sound. But I'll
Hmm.
be watching it. And I'll watch what they're missing, and you talk to them. What do you want to work? What's the problem, and what have you been working on, etc. Um, and then a number of times I've asked people. I say, do me a favor, without looking up to the target, point to it, and they will. If they're sometimes they will often point to where their miss is. So the perception of where they think the club is supposed to go, as far as maybe an exit, will affect. In other words, as a drastic point or as an extreme, they could have a perfectly technically sound swing in the wrong direction, and they're not getting the
Mm-hmm.
result they want, and they think that they've got to go on this deep swing rebuild. And I say no, and it might take them. I mean, they might hit some really really crooked shots as you adjust that, because obviously that's coming from inside. But
Mm-hmm.
they get it quicker than they think. They go from horrendously sideways shots to very quickly, and quickly would mean anywhere from 10 to 20 swings. And then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden they hit the center of the face and they look up and it's going exactly where they want to. And then we'll
Mm-hmm.
go back and I'll say, okay, point to the target now, and they're pointing straight down the middle of the fairway.
Yeah, my favorite training aid's still a piece of rope. Like and most people fail to ever consider the fact that golf is an offline game, right? So, our visual targeting system is not on the same line as the ball, and between everything from eye dominance to neck mobility to just the way in which we turn our body to look at the
Mm-hmm.
target, right? I can do it in totally different ways, and that's going to give me different perception. I mean, that's I found in the last few years of my coaching career, I'm spending the most time working on the eyes and the ankles down. And if I get things right from the ankles down and the eyes, everything else seems to sync up pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Like again, common question early on I have with I'll ask a student in a coaching relationship is like, well, do you want the good news or the bad news? Like, okay, well, what's the good news? Your swing is way better than like how you know how to use it. Oh, okay. What's the bad news? You're blind. What? Yeah, you're just absolutely blind. You know, you're swinging where you think the target is, but you don't. Like I get people. This is a fun one for me. So it's like you can imagine you got a ball down the range. You go stand behind the ball. I'll teach them how to barrel sight. So we're going to hold the
Mm-hmm.
club shaft up and close one eye, and barrel sight the ball on line with their target. Pick a spot in the grass that's 8 or 10 yards out in front, and go put an alignment stick there. Okay, good. Come on back behind the ball. Okay, now I want you to look straight over the alignment stick. Where is it going at the target? Yes. Okay, now let's get into your address position. Okay, look straight over the alignment stick. Where's it going? And they usually freak out and like, oh my God, and then step back. So like, yeah, I mean, best training aid a person could get down to Home Depot, get like the 1 inch thick nylon boat rope, get yourself a 20-foot long piece, throw it in the golf bag, and start at 3 feet in front of your golf ball, run it straight out to the target, and go figure some stuff out. It's crazy.
I did a video that I think I did I do is post the I might not even posted the short yet, that's had the typical fiberglass 3 foot long alignment stick, which most people will
Mm-hmm.
get at Home Depot or Lowe's or any big box store. And then
Yep.
I had friends making fun of me because I had a ball retriever in my bag. They said, "You played for a living? You have a ball retriever in your bag?" I said, "You don't get it. Come on." And I'll show them. And now that ball, I found it in a lost and found. It's an old school ball retriever. I mean, it's got to go out 30 plus feet. And I
Mm-hmm.
will stretch that thing out and I'll say, "Now look down the target line." And they,
Mm-hmm.
exactly as you said, they go, "Oh my, no way." I said,
Yep.
"It's a straight line. We know that it's not curved. It's metal and it goes out
Yeah.
longer." So yeah, it's the perceptual issue. And the other thing, I I have the theory. I don't have any way to test it. Maybe you would know in the lab. You've seen it. The longer the club, the more they aim out to the right, because they are looking through at the target line from further for a right-hand golfer. They're left of the target line, so they're looking on a bigger angle to the target. So it's much easier for them, their alignment to be skewed that direction than it is to be open on a
Yeah. I
shorter
mean,
club.
I'd say it depends. That's definitely more common in most people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know for myself personally, I'm the outlier. The more the ball gets back in my stance, the more everything from vision to body lines and stuff start to head out to the right.
Hmm.
Um, but I think a lot of it for me, I'm very, very right eye dominant, like super, super right eye dominant, and also, you know, my neck is not in the best shape. And, even when I was younger and still playing, I wasn't able to actually tilt my head in posture. I could always get a tight pinch on the right side. So I would always have my head up, spin out, and then
So
look that way and then
you would
back
lose
down.
that. You would lose the axial. The axis
Yeah.
would shift. Yeah.
Right. So, it's, um, I mean, see the same thing in putting as well. The putting stuff has been pretty wild. Studying the vision and movement dynamics in there, like, same thing I'd say to people, like, I don't care if you putt with a line on your ball or not. What I do care about is that if you are 8 feet away from the hole, you have a line on your ball that's pointed directly at the middle of the hole. When you set up to hit that putt, that line better look like it's going in the middle of the hole. And if it's not, I don't know how you're going to be a good putter, because I haven't seen many blind people make a lot of putts.
Mm-mm.
Just, just it's tough.
No, I went down a very when I missed the last year I missed Q school was 2005, and I had gotten to my putting was off enough that I was lipping out on average 6 times around. Like
Mm,
guys would we you meet the guys you're playing with on the first hole, and if there's I don't know how many guys on a mini tour, but they would say, hey, I heard the rumor, I don't believe it. It can't be true. And at the end of the round, they would say, I never would have believed if I didn't see it. So I had something that was off. So
yeah.
when I missed that year, I went from well inside the cut line at first stage to missing by one or two, and I was so mad. I shot 77 the last. I would think I was 11 under. Shot 77 the last day, and I'm going home. And I said, I am
Hmm.
going to make it my life's mission to figure this out. And went down a very deep hole on neuroscience, and that took about 5 years of that. And then I met Jeff Mangum, who's the mad
Hmm.
scientist, you mad
Yeah,
scientist,
yeah,
just
yeah,
a real mad scientist. And some of his things about horizontal eye line and head position, neck swivel, and things like that on sighting the ball to the hole and the target and proprioception confirmed a lot of the things. You're doing it on your own. You don't know. You don't have anything to bounce it off of. But obviously, Jeff is exceptional at what he does. But yeah, there is a lot of that. And like I said, people,
oh yeah,
their perception of where they're supposed to hit it is completely askew a lot
yeah.
of
Like,
times.
when I was playing, I would mess around, like, okay, let me try this line thing. It's like 2006, 2007. You're starting to see that stuff a little bit. I'd put a line down on the ball. I'd stand over it, and it was looking so far left of the hole. I'm like, okay, no, this is freaking me out. I quit. No, I'm out. So I want, like, no, I didn't want to see any markings on the ball when I putted. I didn't want my putter to have any markings. And I think it was 2008 or 2009. I was at the PGA show, and David Adele had his booth set up. They had the big fitting cart and all that kind of stuff. And so he, put the mirror on my putter face. I had a hand welded Scotty Cameron 009. I had two of them that were built for me. So I'm like, well, I mean, Scotty made it. It's not the putter. And he wheels the ball out of the way of the green laser, and I'm looking at the little curtain thing that they've got, expecting to see this green dot. I'm like, yeah, what's going on? It's not there. And then he points. I'm like, I'm so far up and so far left, I'm missing the curtain. I'm like, oh God, that's not good. And that kind of started to get me going for just, like, understanding it. I'm going, okay, well, this makes sense, because I, you know, I was probably my own worst enemy as a golfer. I didn't really keep any of my stats. I just was lucky enough that I had 200 ball speed before 200 ball speed was a thing,
Mm-hmm.
so I could get away with a lot of other stuff. Um, but I intuitively knew that between basically, like, from 3 feet to 9 feet was a struggle, and so what happened to me, very good at visualization. So when I got to the point where I couldn't see the hole in my peripheral, I was a better than average putter, because I didn't have any of this, visual confusion going on. And
Right.
as soon as the hole was in my peripheral, oh man, it was weird. And like most, who's the best putter at that time? Tiger. So I try and have a setup like Tiger, and a ball position like Tiger, and head position like Tiger, and all that stuff. And man, it was terrible.
Hmm.
I mean, now, I've worked through, you know, I guess just, it's a combination of research and experience and coaching people. Like my putter, I putt so much better now than I ever did, but I've got about probably 35 degrees more hip bend. I've got 25 to 30 degrees more elbow bend. My putter is an inch longer than it used to be, and it's 5 degrees flatter. And my eyes are about 6 inches inside the ball.
Hmm.
But I can see. I'm not blind anymore.
Yeah, it
So I
works.
don't, yeah, like I don't putt with a line anymore. When I do practice, I'll practice with a line just to make sure that my vision's calibrated. And same thing with full swing. Like, my swing is my swing. it changes because I can't move as well as I used to, but it's going to be the same pattern for the rest of my life. And I've figured out as long as I maintain my alignment and ball position, I'm going to hit it pretty freaking good. But if I don't maintain those two things, yeah, it can get squirrely in a hurry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone has a couple defaults that they, no matter how many times you've worked on your swing, who's worked on it with you, that there's always going to be a couple hand. I tell some students when I've worked with them that we're going to get to a point, as you mentioned earlier, it's not so much can we, are you going to hit it great? You'll hit it very good at certain points, but it's identifying just those couple things that no matter what we do, we can get those two or three things out of your swing. But at certain points, you're going to have two or three things that are always going to creep back in your swing for maybe for things that we can't even have the ability to measure yet. We don't know how to get them out 100%. Maybe that's your DNA. Maybe that's how you learn to walk and you have certain hip rotation, whatever the reasoning is. But I said that the important thing is that you learn to identify when those things are starting to happen so that you can fix it and you don't have to come see me, or you're not playing bad for 3 or 4 weeks in the summer, which is,
Mm-hmm.
up north, it's a third of the season.
Yep.
You're going to get to a point where you're going to do certain things and you're going to have certain feels and you say, okay, the last 100 times I did this, if I would have listened to my coach sooner, maybe it would have only taken a few times, but the last 100, this is the direction I was going. This is one of the three things I fall into. Here's what I need to do to get out of it. And you're back playing well within a week and a half. And then you're on your way again. You might not be hitting it how you want to, but you're on the path to hitting it how you want to. And I tell students, if I can get you to there, it doesn't matter what skill level they are, then some of the mini tour guys I worked with, you can get to where there's one or two or just three things that they know how to manage.
Yep.
They're going to hit it pretty good.
Yeah, we like to, we like to use the term maintenance. So
Mm-hmm.
like when we're talking to people about like, okay, well, here's how you should go practice. First thing is like spend your first 10 to 15 minutes on your maintenance work, whatever it is for you. And then, if you're working on something technical, once you know that you've got your baseline is calibrated, you're in a good spot. Okay, now work on the stuff that's technical, and do that for about 20 minutes. And then for the last 15 minutes, shift everything towards outcome oriented practice.
Mm-hmm.
Changing targets, changing clubs, keeping score, build gains for yourself, whatever it is. Easy to say. For whatever reason, it's hard for people to do. I
Yes,
think
but
it's,
that's part. I think that's part of that learning curve, and I will tell them that. Look, you're not. I do tell them this because, as you know, and every coach out there knows it. Every student thinks once they break 100, they're going to be happy, or once they break 90, or once they break 80, or once they break 70. And I tell the guys or girls, ladies who haven't broken 100 yet, I said, let me set the table for you right now. It's never going to
mm-hmm.
change.
Yeah,
You're never gonna be satisfied because if you break 100, your next thing is you want to break 90. It's a human nature to want to progress and grow. So don't tell me that when you break your 100 you're going to be happy, because you'll be happy for a little while, and
yeah.
that day that you'll be happy, maybe you go out
And
and
what's
celebrate,
next?
but yeah, what's the next thing? And then
What's next?
the whole cycle continues again. You got another mountain to climb.
Well, yeah, and it's interesting. You joke about our clients, and it's like I think the second you cynicism coming through, it's like, okay, well, this the second one of your clients pulls on property to golf course, guess what? Their IQ gets cut in half. And then the second their hands touch the grip, they become an emotional wreck. So this is what you're dealing with, right? Like we got captains of industry that have thousands of people working for them that make hundreds of decisions a day, critical decisions with very little thought. And then they become an absolute emotional mess as soon as they're hitting balls on a golf range and it's not going exactly how they want.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's good
I
for
remembered
business.
when I was a young assistant, the pro was doing a golf school, and this club, it was before Kiowa really, it was one of the wealthiest clubs in the state of South Carolina. I think per capita it might have eclipsed Kiowa, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a very big club. It was much smaller, and obviously it had all the titans of business that were members there, CEOs of Fortune 50 companies. We had a bunch of those, and the pro did a golf school, and he brought in this local sports psychologist who was in the first graduating class of the doctorate program that Dr. Bob Rotella had started at Virginia, and Doc Bryce was very good. And the first he was told who the clientele was, and
Mm-hmm.
so he did a talk that the very first night they had a welcome, get together and dinner and heavy hors d'oeuvres and drinks. And then he was giving his talk. And he opened with, all of you here are titans in your industry, are very successful entrepreneurs. You've done exceptional things. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have hit a shot on the 12th hole at Augusta National on Masters Sunday? Or how many of you have gone down to the RBC Heritage and hit the 18th tee ball with a 2-shot lead? I mean, he basically, for more like, cut their legs out for them thinking that they were good right
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning, and in a good way, to set them up for, if you're going to stay in the comfort zone of your accomplishments in your business, then you're never going to be accepting enough to take the information that you're going to get over the next 3 or 5 days to improve. So let's just,
Yep.
eliminate that ego internally so that you can become better, and eventually you get to what you want to get to.
It's interesting. I mean, so much of it, we're talking about starting with students and setting expectations, and I think so much of it is also defining roles. Like
Mm-hmm.
our motto, hashtag, whatever. I don't know if you stumbled across that at the golf lab. Did you ever see what that was? We make
Mm-hmm.
T-shirts every year. Suck less.
It's pretty direct.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, you're probably not ever going to be any good, but if you suck less than you do now, you'll have more
You're
fun, you'll
advancing.
shoot lower scores, and you'll probably stay as a client. And I don't really think anything of it. And as specifically one time in my Super Bay, it's one big golf lab in Edgeley Boulevard, and I've got this, again, titan of industry, actually like part owner of several high-end private golf courses, investment banker. I'm like, man, Rob, that sucks so much less than before. Why don't you just do that all the time? My staff after, like, do you know what you said to him? I'm like, no, what? He said you told him he sucked less. I'm like, yeah, he did. I mean, it wasn't good, but like, so I think like there's and everyone's got to do it differently for their personality. But I think one of the ways to be successful with that type of client is to kind of find ways to define the role
Mm-hmm.
and find ways to get them to listen. And certain times you have to have a little bit of shock value to get them to snap out of, wherever their head is at or whatever else they're dealing with, so they can actually lock in and listen and, even set the expectation. Like a lot of times I'll be like, okay, so what do you do? Oh, great. You're an accountant. Well, you know what's super confusing to me? Um, I don't know why they call debits debits and credits credits, because I feel like when I use my credit card, it should be called a debt, and debt is like debit without an I. But you know what? That's why I hired an accountant, because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So we're in my office now. Let's try and check in and maybe listen to some things.
Yeah, and I think especially the very successful people are, that they don't get offended by that. Or most of them don't. At least I haven't had any on my team become offended, because they're coming to you to get help. That's what they're there for. You can't be rude to them, but then the onus is on you as the coach, or any coach out there, that you better be able to back it up and get them better.
I
Um,
think it's the opposite. Like you gain their respect much
yes,
faster, and they
yes,
actually listen more because
they
the other
appreciate it.
thing right, because again, I think about what does the rest of this person's day look like. You've got 1,000 employees. There's a good chance that 90% of them are yes men, just
Mm-hmm.
telling you that every idea you have is good and not really challenging you and all that kind of stuff. So like, yeah, you've got to really change their mindset for that hour that you've got them.
Yeah,
You've
or
got
they're
to,
worried about, are people doing what they're supposed to be doing? If they come to you and you're
yeah,
doing what you're supposed to be doing, getting them better, I don't think that many of them are too concerned about the way that you're doing it, so long as it's respectful. I mean, you can't do some, you can say
yeah,
certain things, but as long
yeah,
as it's respectful. And now,
yeah,
if you know them well, maybe you say whatever you want to. But I mean, there was a famous story at Bob Toski where he's trying to get a guy to mini tour guy to feel something in his swing. I don't know if this is true. This is mini tour talk, when you're sitting around dinner
yeah, yeah, yeah.
to 10 guys or so. And one of them said his buddy went to Toski and said, can you feel it? No. Can you feel it? No. And like the third time, Toski said, can you feel this? He said, no. And he kicked him in the groin. He said, you feel that? He says, the guy's down on the ground. He's like, I just want to make sure you had some feel, because you couldn't feel anything else.
Yeah, I've had a few like that along the way for sure.
One thing I want to ask you about, because it's on one of the early on in your website that I found extremely interesting for a very odd reason that I told you I'd bring up to was the ping pong ball catching.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's almost comical. And I sent a note to Doug and I said, I said, I had a good laugh today that really made my day when I watched a video of you trying to catch ping pong balls being tossed at you.
Mm,
One of the reasons I found it very interesting, when I was about 4 or 5 years old, my one uncle, I don't know, he learned this in a martial art class. Not that he was big in martial arts, but he learned it and he practiced it, and he had me do it as a very young kid. And he had ping pong balls at different heights hanging from strings in the basement. Anywhere,
mm-hmm,
and they would be chest height, waist height, shoulder height, head height, just varying degrees. And now, as a 4 or 5 year old kid, I thought it was very cool because here's these balls, but they were all colored. So I'm like, wow, this is really neat. But he told me that I said, what do you do with this? Because I'm running in between them. I'm a kid. I'm just running. I think it's awesome.
yeah, yeah,
And he said, open your hand like you have a paddle, and I want you to hit that ball. And when it comes back to, I want you to hit it again. And it took me a while, meaning, I don't know, maybe a few times. I mean, that's 45, 46 years ago. It was probably, I don't know, it was a couple hours or a couple weeks of going over their house and going down the basement and playing with this. But I got very, very good at it, where I could hit it consistently. And it didn't matter what height. I got to be very accomplished with it. And from, I had always had good eye-hand coordination in sports. Now, whether that was the catalyst or not, I don't know. But in watching the video of people trying to catch it, I distinctly remember, as odd as that might sound, the ping pong ball on its way back, because of the light weight, it almost had a float and a flutter. And as I watched people try to catch it, they would miss it. Usually they would grasp at it too soon. And I
mm-hmm,
just wonder if it was because the floating of the ball as it moves in space just a little bit, and it's coming almost slower than let's say a golf ball that has more mass would. It's used an extreme example.
mm-hmm.
Um, I said, man, this is cool. I really got to ask Liam about the concept of that, because I'm coming at it just as a kid who did it and benefited from it.
Yeah, mine. I mean, this came from a trip I made over to Iceland, actually. So I was presenting. It was my first time presenting at the World Golf Fitness Summit,
Mm-hmm.
and I gave a presentation, and things like how to hit it 300 yards in 8 weeks. And so I took I had this guy come in to the golf lab for a training program, and um, he was like 6'6", super fit, super flexible. We're going through the initial student interview with him. I'm like, okay, Grant, like, what are we doing here? He's like, you know what? Sick and tired of my wife hitting it past me. I'm like, what the fuck? Jesus. Okay. And sure enough, you know, his club head speed wasn't great, but it was still still like over 100. But he was swinging 8 across and 8 down and laying the shaft back and like it was gross. Like I think the
Mm.
longest drive he hit in his baseline test was like 212 or 214. And I'm like, hey man, um, I don't know if you're into this, but like I'm pretty sure I can get you to hit it 300 yards, but I'm going to ask you to do a whole bunch of weird shit, and I'll do it for free if you let me document it and actually teach people about it when we're done. He's like, yep, done. I'm in. So like whatever, we did all kinds of weird shit. I'm pretty sure there's still a video on our YouTube channel called Project 300. It documents some of it. So anyway, whatever, it worked. I think he hit it like 308 or something on one ball 8 weeks later. And so we give this presentation, and at the end of it, this dude walks up and he's indoors and he's still wearing a winter jacket and a kind of funky accent. He's like, yeah, I want to do your program. I'm like, okay, like you got to come to Toronto for like 8 weeks. He's like, oh, I can't do that. I'm like, I figured. And so then he's like, okay, maybe you can come to Iceland. I'm like, all right, man, whatever. Give him my card. Sure enough, get an email. So this guy's name is Gertie Gretarsson, and he's a physical therapist trainer. Like he's got so many letters behind his name.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what he does. He brought me over to Iceland to do uh, work with their junior national team, their national team, a couple professionals. host a couple seminars for clients of his clinic in Reykjavik and stuff like that. And I get to learn a little bit more about him. I'm hanging out with this guy, and he's full blown crazy in the most awesome way. So I find out from one of his buddies, he's developed Olympians, not coach, but I like developed from a young age, Olympians in 5 different sports from a country of 300,000 people, and
Wow.
everything from a power lifter to a marathon runner. And then I find out he does contract work with Bayern Munich and Chelsea football clubs. And then we're driving through Reykjavik, and all of a sudden he slams the brake on, and he gets out of the car, and he's talking to one of these two ladies that's just walking down the sidewalk, and he looks very angry. And he gets back in the car. I'm like, "What's that all about?" He's like, "She was walking like cow." I'm like, what?" He's like, "Yeah, she like this was one of his clients, and he's like, "No, she wasn't walking right." I'm like, "Holy shit, this guy's awesome." And so anyway, we finish up, and we're at his house for dinner, and he's got a couple of his buddies over and stuff like that at dinner. And he's like, "Okay, it's time for me to show you my training room." I'm like, "All right." So we go downstairs, and it's like a little room, and there's a bookcase there, and there's a ping pong table that's like folded up in half, and it has a robot on it. And he just goes, "Okay, like this, catching." And he starts shooting ping pong balls out. And we're like, "Okay." And he goes, "No, now one hand. Okay, now alternate hands." And he's getting other guys, the other guys that are there to do it. One guy played professional football, soccer. Was a golf coach now. The other guy I given a golf lesson to, and he may be the worst ball striker I've ever met. And then
Mm-hmm.
watching him try and catch a ping pong ball, a lot of things started to come together.
Hmm.
Like, it was crazy. And so anyway, I'm going through this, and he keeps making all these harder levels. I also very fortunate. I got very high level hand. I always have. And then he gets his notebook out, and he starts flipping through the pages. And he's like, "Okay, you're number 3 all time." I'm like, "What the hell does that mean?" And he starts talking about like this is his like baseline test with every athlete he works with,
Hmm.
and starts to talk to me about all the different things that he's looking at. And it's then he's videoed a couple things, and he puts like overlays this grid on it, and he's like, "You have left ankle problem." I'm like, "Oh shit, yep." Yeah, like that was my career ending volleyball injury. He goes, "Yeah, your T spine extension's not so good either." I'm like, "Yeah." And we're just like, "What the hell is going on?" He completely like decoded all this stuff. And he starts talking through, how you can learn about the way people move their body, about watching, their head movements, watching their eye tracking and all this kind of stuff. And, I'm on the flight home. It's, you know, in the early days of in-flight Wi-Fi. I'm texting my wife. I'm like, "Wendy, we got to buy a ping pong robot. It's like $700. She's like, "Oh, fuck, you're crazy." I'm like, "No, no, trust me. It'll be awesome." So anyway, I end up buying it, and like kind of formulate these 10 levels, and just start making our clients at the golf lab go through it. Part of it is also thinking about like you mentioned consistency earlier. That's what everyone says that they're looking for the most part. I'm like, okay, so let's think about this. You sit like this at your desk for 8 hours a day. There's a good chance you might drive like this for an
Mm-hmm.
hour to and from work every day. And then when you're not eating, you probably sit like this on the couch. Yet you, over this period of a 4 to 4.5 hour round with a multitude of different lies, you want to be able to consistently hit a sweet spot that's the size of the head of a pin on clubs that are 13 different lengths. Like, this ain't adding up. So, part of it was like, just the different thoughts. So even at the start, I'm like, okay, well, I mean, it's not going to make anyone worse. And, this guy just rode in his car from his downtown office 35 minutes to come and get here. At least, we'll get some blood moving. He'll get moving. We'll have a few laughs and all this kind of stuff. And, um, we started to be like, okay, look, you don't have to do it when you can pass level 10. But like literally, if you can't sit here and catch like 10 ping pong balls in a row, at least catch 7 out of 10 of them, how on earth are you going to coordinate this incredibly complex golf swing?
Mm-hmm.
And so, we started watching just with no guidance or no instruction, we saw, there's middle-aged guys starting to move in a more athletic fashion. So instead of just going like, moving their head and dropping the ball, they would actually like bend their knees and like move their whole body and keep their eye line level and not take their eyes off the ball, and all kinds of different stuff like that. And it's like, okay, well, then we started to look into some of the motion capture data and, look at basic things like head movement. And I'm definitely not saying keep your head down. That's like the worst advice you could ever get. But it was interesting um, looking at head tilts and head translations from backswing to contact and seeing how they were able to organize the rotation of their body in a way that, I felt allowed them to have, better visual perception of the golf ball. And I think that helps.
Mm-hmm.
Um, from some guys who would, you know, end up losing it with both eyes, only having one eye on it, to just self-organizing. And so, then we're like, okay, well, we think it's working. Let's study it and prove it. I'd have to dig through. We presented at World Scientific Congress of Golf, and it was like 2018, whichever one was in Abbotsford, but I can't remember the exact numbers. But what we did observe was like, as people progressed, as they got better at that individual catching skill, we saw the spray chart of their impact patterns start to get smaller, like significantly smaller. And so, not like, I don't care about the path or the pace or the club head speed, but at the end of the day, if you hit it out the middle more often, you
Yeah, you're gonna play
pretty much
better.
are going to be
You
better.
can yeah, you can predict where the ball's gonna go to a greater extent.
Right. So, you know, becoming a slightly better athlete with better hand-eye coordination. Gosh, who'd have thunk it? You're going to hit better golf balls.
I
you
mean,
know,
the first thing that comes to mind is it's so simple and so effective. It reminds me of throw another Toronto guy out there is Dr. Jordan Peterson. Where he
yeah.
says, if you want to get your life in order, start by cleaning up your bedroom. If it fun at the most fundamental level, if you can't keep your bedroom clean, how is your life going to be non-chaotic?
Oh man, I hope my wife's not listening to this.
I mean, and here I say that. I mean, if I could take a picture of my desk, I got my taxes half sprayed across it. I've got notes from every podcast maybe I've had in the last month all over the place. Other stuff. I mean, it is such. It looks like a bomb went off in this papers all over the floors, golf shafts, sets of clubs everywhere, and I've only been wanting to clean it for like a year and a half, and I get and I that rings in my head. Usually when I lay down to go to sleep, and all of a sudden
Yeah,
my brain relaxes. It's like, well, if your room's a mess or your office is a mess, your life's going to be a mess. It's just maybe it has some relevance that you do the most simple thing, and it will help everything else further down the line. But you miss the
yeah.
simple thing, and it's going to be a little harder.
That's I think as a like here's one of the most interesting, I think, discussions or debates you could have with a panel of people in the golf coaching world is like, are you giving clients what they want or what they need? Because I think for the most part, people out there are giving them what they want.
Mm-hmm.
When you, especially in the, with technology or even video, it's like, oh, let's make this super complicated and let's use all kinds of big words and let's invent a bunch of terms. Um, and that's what I think a lot of people want.
So
Like,
what
oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's the common perception of the industry. If they're seeing it repetitively on the internet, then I think they're going to
yeah,
gravitate toward that's what they want, as opposed to, as you said, what they need. If and that's why the questions that how you talk to somebody from the beginning, and identifying what they are coming there for is so important. That if you don't establish that right away, you're just going to be using technology, and you're wasting your time. They are, and are they really getting better outside of just hitting more balls?
yeah, probably not.
Mm-mm.
Maybe different. It's like, yeah, I just, yeah, it's interesting the number of people come in. Oh yeah, no, I'm looking to improve. Want to get more trail shoulder external rotation. I'm trying to work on my trail ankle eversion and lead hand supination through the strike point. Motherfucker, you're falling down after you hit a goddamn driver. Let's try like standing, maybe.
Let's try the first basic human
Like,
thing is to
don't get me
stay
wrong. Like,
upright.
you're not Scotty Scheffler. I'm sorry. Like, guess what? You suck.
Hmm.
So, like, let's start with the basics. But yeah.
Speaking of I want to ask you something about club fitting because that's one of the aspects of what you guys do, and it's an integral part of your business. And as you mentioned, basics. Let's start with the grip because you guys have done an extensive study on the grip. If you're going to start with the most basic part of club fitting, I would say how
hmm
you put your hands on the grip, and the implement that you're wrapping them around is going to be very important. So can
hmm
you talk to that a little bit about what you have discovered and come upon?
Well, so we did our first grip study was specifically on grip size, and I think typical, our inspiration came from like a combination of where do we think the industry's got it wrong? Where do we think the anecdotal information out there just can't be right? And then a combination of like, what can people actually do? Like, most of our golf coaches that are our clients, part of our Golf Lab certified family, they don't have the tools that we have. And they're never
Mm-hmm.
going to have the tools that we're going to have. But like, so what actual, what can we do that they could actually apply, right? Because if they can't apply the findings that we have, then what's the point of even doing the work? So, this one was like walking through pro shop. I'm like, I look behind the counter, count up how many different sizes of glove they've got. 12 sizes of glove in stock. Looking at the clubs they got in stock, one size of grip. Oh well, shit, this can't be right. That's all I know. So we ended up, concocting a study where it's like, okay, we're going to take all the different measurements of the hand, and we're going to grab data. By this time we moved on and we were using Foresight launch monitors, and so okay, we're going to use a GC quad, we're going to use K vest, and we're going to build 5 perfectly matching shafts with just different size grips on them and sort through the grips to make sure we've got the right weight of grip so we're able to have match the club to every possible degree that you can, and then we're just going to have people hit them all. We had a sample set of people that we tested in Toronto, and then we shipped the equipment off to Winnipeg, where we had Corey Cartouche, one of our advisory board members, run the exact same testing with a sample set of his people, and then they went out to the West Coast with Jason Giesbrecht to do the same thing. We put all the data together, and the basic premise was like, by only changing grip, can we see a significant improvement in either club head speed or, like directional consistency.
Mm-hmm.
So the club head speed one, I thought we would see something there, but nothing that we determined to be significant. The most club head speed gain from the person's like baseline size grip they used was like 1.2 miles an hour. I'm not saying meaningless, but it's also hard for me to say that's significant.
Yeah, it's about a
Um,
percent.
yeah. So what we did see though was we saw more than a 30% improvement in the consistency of closure rate. The rate at which the club face is
Mm-hmm.
rotating coming into impact, and resulted in significantly tighter dispersion. We're like, oh my god! So across this entire population, not the same, more effective for some, less effective for others, but we're talking like a 30% improvement in this magical consistency thing just by changing grips. Well, the first thing he did was like, well, shit, Carson, you got a way higher budget for grip sales next year because I know most people are using the wrong size. Um, and then the other thing that was interesting was like going through and processing the data. Most people use standard size grips because that's what their clubs came with.
Right.
And then when we looked at so we tested like an undersize, a standard, the MCC plus 4, which is a little bigger under the bottom hand, a mid-size, and a jumbo. The MCC plus 4 tested, it had the fewest people that performed best with it, but the other 4, like we'll say common standard sizes, were completely even in the number of people that performed best with it. So
Hmm.
it's like, and then And then the last part, I actually had to send this to Sasho to check my math because it was for a presentation. The correlation between hand length and grip size was 0.00 something. I'm like, oh my God. So the size of
Well,
glove that you have actually means 100% of nothing for what grip you should use.
yeah, because is it, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. I don't mean to. I just got to get the thought out of my head. Is it more the relationship or the ratio of the length of the fingers for the size of the hand, meaning the fingers being the base of the finger, the tip, and the hand being the base, the palm?
I don't know. I don't know. We've got into some grip pressure studies and we're continuing to try and dive down this rabbit hole. We've got some first the preliminary data. Um, I don't know what or why, but I know that now we're just like, well, just test, like literally just test and see what's good for you. Like the one person with the smallest hand size in that study performed best with a jumbo grip. The person with the biggest hands performed best with the undersized grip.
So there's
You
no
know, my
rhyme or reason to what the performance
I have
change
no
was
clue.
from. Not yet, at
Through
least.
some of the subjective questioning is like, the person with the small hand said, "Oh well, I've got arthritis in my hands, and it felt like I could just squeeze it tighter." And the person with the big hands is like, "Well, what do it feel like when you're swinging the undersized grip?" I felt like I was just doing everything I could to not have the club fly out of my hands. Which so then I'm thinking like, okay, well, you know, my brain immediately goes to, okay, well, both these people stabilize the sweet spot better. And if the sweet spot is on a more stable arc, it makes sense that it might be more consistent. And
Hmm.
then we look in some of like the grip strength type stuff. We get a chance to tap into TPI's database at, grip strength of professional players and grip strength of amateurs. Um, you know, when a professional player says they're holding like a 6 or 7 out of 10, at certain points in the swing, they're right. Certain points are not. But what the general public fails to realize is like their 6 or 7 out of 10 is like a 12 out of 10 for you. So all this
Right.
person does is hit goddamn golf balls all day. Like, have you ever shook hands with a tour pro? If you're not ready for it, they might pop some knuckles. So yeah, the hold it like a baby bird thing, not exactly
Doesn't really
ideal.
apply. No.
Right, right. So yeah, we don't know. But yeah, our solutions have been tested.
When you get into some of the other, I'll call them general parameters of fitting, the length of the club, the lie of the club. Uh, can you just touch on those things some? We'll start with length. How do you go about determining length
We
outside of just
test
a
it.
demo hitting session?
Yeah, well, so what we maybe have de-evolved from where we used to make things super complicated, and we ended up doing done a bunch of human testing, did a bunch of robot testing. But like if you came in for a driver fitting, we're going to test 4 different lengths of shaft, and we're going to see what you have the highest ball speed with. I know you're going to swing the longer one faster, but if you don't hit it out the middle, we're not going to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then like when we look at shaft weight, um, shaft weight has a lot to do. Optimizing shaft weight can help the person's transition sequence,
Mm-hmm.
both from efficiency and consistency. So it's like less than 15% of golfers we've tested have the highest club head speed with the 45-gram shaft, the lightest shaft in our matrix. It gets so light they throw it away, they lose
Yeah.
control of it. So we're testing shaft weights. We're looking at club head speed. Um, and then of course not all club head speeds are created equal. So, majority of our driver optimizations, we're going to test a couple different flexes because there's a lot of different ways to put force through the shaft. And that can obviously, have a big effect on face to path and, baselines of control. And then from there, if it does look like consistency is an issue for the person, then we'll test the grip size, and then put all of the parts together. So, I think like there was one point where I had, I don't know, 200 driver shafts with all the different models and flexes, and I had them all cut to 45 inches. And then I looked down at all the people that are in the lab right now, I'm like, oh shit, this ain't right.
Mm,
Um, and that was the length study was first, and then the weight study, and it's so our business model has really shifted to like not quite a single shaft ski, but not far off, and it's like for the vast majority of players, like down to scratch and tournament players, if we get you in the right length and the right weight and the right flex and the right head setup, you're optimized. And when you go through and if you want to test different bend profiles within your whatever 45 and 3/4, 65
mm.
gram, blah 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 blah, like giver, go ahead. You might notice some different feels, but you're really not going to get a lot of difference in performance. Now, like if you're a tour pro or you're at that high level, like, well, shit, yeah, let's do that because you're actually repeatable enough to matter.
Yeah, you're
But
looking for very small, consistent. If we bring up consistent, the tour pro level is going to be
right,
consistently. If they're consistently off of 1%, that's for them. That's a quite big thing. That a
right.
hole you can fill.
Well, and the first time, I still remember the first time I ever did robot testing, and I'm going through, robots all calibrated. We don't even take the club out, and I'm seeing 10 swings. I'm like, hey, how come the club path is changing by like half a degree? It's a robot. Oh, yeah. Well, so like even when the robot is programmed the damn same, we're seeing some variability, which made it
Mm.
easier for me to let go of some preconceived notions and focus on like, let's get the big things right before we worry about the details. Like, you know, guy, I just laughed still when a guy walked in. He's like, "Yeah, I'm looking to get fitted for a graphite design DI6 X Flex tipped half an inch." Like, wait, you're looking to get fitted for that? Why don't you just buy it, man? Like, you're clearly not. I mean,
Oh,
I don't even love the word fitting because technically I've never had a golf club that didn't fit in my hand.
mm-hmm.
But, if we look at optimization, there is, from a data driven approach, there is only one shaft length that's creating, your maximum ball speed, whatever it is.
Interesting how you said that the 45, 55 gram shafts people would actually slow down. And I would tell some people in our, I mean, we got a big golfing area in Hilton Head area, and it's
Yeah.
a close knit golf group. Amateurs, it's a Hilton Head Open. Amateurs and the pros play together for the first couple of days. So you get to know a lot of people very quickly. It's a close knit community, and some of the guys or girls would come to me and say, "Hey, I got this 55 gram shaft. I can swing it X amount faster." I said, "Well, how you hitting it?" "Well, I'm not hitting. I just got to work on some things." You always hear that they got. I just got to.
Yeah.
I'm working on some things. It's gonna, but I tell them it's not, because yeah, you can move the club head faster, but can you move your body faster to accommodate the increased speed of the club and the way your arms are moving? And often
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to be able to, because it's so much lighter, as you mentioned. There's not enough resistance given back to them to coordinate the movement together. They're going to lose an angle somewhere, usually from the top, and like it's not going to correlate to what you want to.
Yeah,
So you're
we
better
ended
off
up
going the other way.
we ended up doing that study two times because we did it the first time and it's like we got the results and of course questions from the professional community come back why. I'm like, oh shit, I don't know why. So we did the whole thing all over again in full body motion capture. And so what we observed, if you build the club properly across different lengths, so you're maintaining things like the swing weight and frequency, we saw no change in kinematic sequence. But as soon as you change the weight of the implement, we saw changes in kinematic sequence.
Yeah,
What
as they're
made me feel
reacting
good,
to it.
right, what made me feel good was like done in a different way, but our data set was matching up with similar things that Sasho had seen in one of his studies. Now he was manipulating club head weight, we were manipulating shaft weight, but we saw some of the same basic stuff.
You
So,
tell them, say, look, unless you can, this is what I used to tell them, unless you can get your body to move faster to accommodate the increased speed that you're having, assuming that you're not losing the angles from the top, which now this was
mhm.
years ago, so we didn't have the motion capture then, as you just described. I said, but unless you can do that, you're not going to hit it further. And if you get your body to move faster and you're 60 some years old, first of all, I doubt that's going to be possible unless you've got some really, you have bad mobility, bad flexibility, and you're terrible in strength. But you're playing golf
Mhm.
regularly, and sometimes you're walking, so I doubt that's the case. But are you going to really want to put that time in as you talked about earlier, is someone going to spend the amount of time to get their shoulder external rotation to a certain degree when it's going to take them away from the golf course, and they're already, maybe they're retired and they're wanting to enjoy playing now. They don't want to work at something. So it's like, just
Hmm.
go get a 60-gram shaft and do the same thing and go have fun.
Just go test it. Like, I mean, I remember I wrote an article a bunch of years ago about how to take a golf lesson. Because I think most people are terrible at taking a golf lesson. And I think we need to put one out there about how to get fitted.
Mm-hmm.
Like which would make it way easier for fitters.
I think, yeah, most people go in like a kid in a candy store. They want to try everything. It's like,
Yeah.
it's not what you're, I mean, it might be fun, but are you, again, going back to the initial thing, what do you want? Do you want to get better, or
Yeah. Do you want a new toy?
do you want a new
Which is
toy?
fine. Hey,
And
I
after the
sell.
shine wears
Yeah,
off, you're going to be back here again.
I'm fine with that. I sell toys, but let's just make sure we're clear on this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's been funny too. That we put all this equipment optimization stuff is all it's all rolled into our annual, like if you're a member, at the golf lab, and we've got such a long client history now. It's like we'll keep doing the driver shaft optimization stuff, and year after year for the same person, it keeps coming up the same. It's like, okay, so, once you figured out, yeah, you're a whatever, a 40, 45, 75, 65 gram, whatever CPM, like, yeah, try all the new shit you want that comes out, but just make sure it's in this area, so to speak.
When you're doing irons, because the irons in the last year or two have really gotten delofted.
Hmm.
A 6 iron today is a 5 iron from 8, 10 years ago, or maybe even little as 5 years ago.
Hmm.
And I know that the design of the clubs, that they move mass lower in the face to get the ball up in the air. But have you found it that you've had to adjust uh, the length of clubs accordingly? Meaning, if a club length of last year's 6 iron now has a loft of a 5 iron, even with the added weight to the bottom of the club to get the ball to go up, that they're going to have some sort of struggle. I just have the theory, without using the technology, that's where some people are getting in trouble with land angles that's coming in too shallow, and or not able to stop the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it too with with the low lofted long irons, when you get down to, a certain club head speed, you're not going to create the spin rate to
Mm-hmm.
create a descent angle. Again, we'll go back to my cynical nature. I also think that what manufacturers have realized is that people are buying golf clubs in indoor environments fitted on a launch monitor looking at total distance. So they love when they see this new 5 iron goes 205. They're not looking at the fact that it landed at 171.
Jeez, I can't seem to hold the ball in the greens. They're too
Yeah,
firm.
yeah, exactly. But man, I hit it a long way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I feel like a lot of it in the engineering principles too is like loft is now the afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
Let's push around the center of mass to create an extreme condition as we can, and then let's build the loft to what it needs to be to interact with that particular CG location for this type of characteristic that we're looking to create. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot going on there. I think the ball, also has a fair bit to do with it, and um, yeah, like that's where I think people need to learn how to be fitted.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to. Do you have time to talk about the ball? Because I wanted to ask you about ball fitting.
Yeah.
If you
Hmm.
got some time, I don't want to.
Sure.
I don't want to outrun my welcome.
Yeah, no, no, all good.
But yeah, the ball thing in particular in today's world is we've got a lot more direct to consumer golf balls between Snell and Vice, and even Clear is a very, very high end ball, and all the
Hmm.
manufacturers are Titleist. TaylorMade just came out with their new ball at Riviera, and guys, Roy, I think he said he picked up half a club. But I had always told students that picking a ball, you would go from the green backwards. So putting, which I mean, most of the balls with urethane now feel very close, and the inserts that they can
Hmm.
put in putters. So not so much the putting, but around chipping. How much spin control do you want? Because you can always get a driver, in particular in today's era, with the ability to increase or decrease spin with what they've done
Hmm.
with CGs and MOIs and everything else. And um, so, how do you guys go about a ball fitting and or recommending what ball to use for to somebody?
Well, I think that the first thing is to determine like what's the player profile. Like first off, who is the person to begin with, and then understanding on which end of the golf course would an either increase or decrease in spin pay the most dividends for them. So, like in the way I, first learned with Titleist was okay, we're going to go, yeah, green out 30 yards. And, when you're paying for a premium ball, you're paying for spin from 30 yards, not for spin from the tee box. And,
Mm-hmm.
I think things have evolved from that. I think, you look at, um, you know, Titleist, for example, releasing the left dash, which was a tour only ball for the longest time. I wish they would release the star because that's the one that
Star
performs
is the
best
one
for
that would
me.
be great. Yeah, me
I
too.
love the star. Yeah, because I can't spin it worth a shit off my driver. But I'm not too concerned about it. So like, I know for me, like, to look like broad scope about fitting, what do I need to do? I need to find ways to spin the ball at 2000 off my driver when my club head speed's only like 118.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and that's why I'm using a driver most people in this podcast have probably never heard of. I don't think most people here have heard of the on-off Kuro Black. Freaking
Geez, I
unbelievable
haven't,
driver.
and I've been in
Yeah,
the industry for almost
it's
35
a
years.
it's a higher end brand from Japan. Um, and the loft is a little higher than what I want for optimizing launch angle, but it's a very high spin driver. So
Hmm.
when I hit this thing high toe, it still spins at like 1600. That I remember having like I think it was a second generation M1 or something like that, and I remember I went out to play a couple holes, hit it good off one, two's a par three, hit it a little bit high toe um, off the 13. The thing must have hooked at least 75 yards and dive bomb. I go back in, recreate the same thing on the launch monitor. I'm going, okay, ball speed 178, spin rate 600. That's not good. That's not good.
You have to think that something's wrong with the machine if it's only registering
Yeah.
600. That is
Yeah,
really
no,
low.
it's goofy. So, that, would be one particular case. And then like if you have someone that's, in whatever 2000 to 2500 relatively optimal, launch condition of the driver, which all that means is really is like their club head speed, their angle of attack, and their dynamic loft are a fit, to create that type of spin rate. Then it's like, yeah, okay, like let's get up around the green and see. But
Mm-hmm.
is more spin around the green always better? I don't know. It reminds me, I think for the higher the handicap player you are, the less spin you should have around the green. This comes from an old Chi Rodriguez story. So he spent a bunch of time at this club in Calgary called the Hamptons, and he's giving a clinic, and some guys asking him, like, well, how do you like, what ball should I play? Well, it starts off like, hey, how do I spin the ball back? He's like, okay, well, how many times do you fly it past the pin? Never. Okay, why do you want to spin it back? Oh, looks cool. Like, what ball should I play? Well, you should probably play a range ball.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because when you hit it good and you hit it like crap, it doesn't spin anytime. So at least you know how your ball's going to react. And I think there's a lot of truth for that. You get into, especially when you get into short game and all the variability, that happens there. I just think about how few players out there have the ability to consistently generate the same ball speed, launch angle, and spin rate. Right? And if you struggle with that, then odds are if you're watching golf podcasts, you probably struggle with that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Um, it, Going to a very low spin ball is going to eliminate one of those pieces of variability. So like imagine knowing how far your ball is going to release every single time, and you don't accidentally clip one cleanly and it digs in and stops 20 feet short. and then the next hole you think you're going to do it again, and so you go and land it 3 feet short of the hole, and of course it doesn't stop. It rolls 20 feet past,
Mm-hmm.
right? But there's just that whole thing like, do you want to get different or better? Do you want to hit one shot that your friends ooh and ah about and talk at the 19th hole, or do you want to play everything to release and shoot a couple strokes lower? I don't know.
Yeah, that goes. It's a very simple thing to ask somebody, and in today's high tech world of everything changing so fast, it's like every 6 months everything changes, and now you got all the, the Mayos and the Ridyards and all these guys that are getting into really in depth things on chipping, and especially if you get a really good player and they modify their chipping, now they're able to spin the ball more. Now it's like, okay, do you want a spinny ball? Do you want this? And the ball market is getting more competitive, and it's like, Maxfly just or Callaway just spent a fortune on that gold ball. Is that the name of it? I can't remember
I
that.
think so.
They
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I mean, that segment's getting competitive, and it's like all these things are changing. It's like, yeah, just pick something that you fairly decently know that the way it's going to react, and get very good at that. And I was very not surprised, but interested to hear Derek Dominski, who can do just about anything with a wedge. When he was on, we were talking. I said I had, the things that irritate the hell out of me is when you think that when you have a lie that's a little shaky, but you think you know what it is, and it comes out and it's completely different. Like it looks like it's sitting down, especially in the
Mm-hmm.
winter. You're in Arizona right now, and
Mm-hmm.
the grass is somewhat flat, and you hit it, but underneath it was very soft, and it just fluffs.
Mm-hmm.
I said, it drives me crazy. He said, well, that's why you need to get exceptionally good at the simple stuff, because those things are going to happen, and you can't change that. So why
Mm-hmm.
don't waste a whole lot of time, as we've talked about, in this episode.
Yep.
Don't waste time on shit that's not going to give you benefit that you can repeat.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Like work on what matters if you really want to score better.
As you look back in all the, you had mentioned a little bit earlier that, and as you advance with technology and become very, very proficient and efficient with it, that people come to you, you're world expert. Is there what would be one of the things that you look back that your mind was changed on the most? That you were very, very, maybe very, very firm in your beliefs, and then through the years of just testing and getting results and looking at what happens,
Oh,
that you
I
look back and say, man, if I could kick
the
myself in the ass back then.
the the one that resonates the most, um, was very shortly after my playing career was done. I got through like whatever my first week at work at this, course called Bondhead. Like I literally, has been moving back to Canada. I've been back to Canada. The guy who ran the place, they actually let me stay at like a bunkhouse on property. I didn't even have a place to live. And on my first day off, I'm like, all right, like I want to go hit balls on this TrackMan thing. And I hit it, still hit it pretty good back then, hitting a ton of balls. And, my nemesis was always a quick sniper hook. And, it only ever happened when it mattered, right? So,
Mm.
only under the most important conditions would this shot ever appear. And all of a sudden I hit one, and I look back at the computer, the old Dell laptop, and it's telling me that the club path was like over 4 degrees into out. And I'm like, what the fuck? Every single time I hit that shot in my life, I thought I came over the top. And I would try and swing more out to the right, which of course made it worse. But that's where I was like, it wasn't a human telling me their opinion or showing me a video or this or that or the other thing. It was just a box that measures stuff. Like I was rattled. I had to like sit down and compose my thoughts for about a half hour, and then go start playing with things and watching how the numbers actually moved, and like literally just thinking about what an idiot I am for not understanding what my kryptonite miss was my entire career.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty impactful for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
The older you get, and you can look back, and if you played for a living or you're a competitive person, and something was your nemesis, as that was to you. Obviously, putting is what the story I told was my Achilles heel when I played, and then it just nags at you, nags at you, nags at you. Even if you're focused on a family or your career, but there's something in the back of your mind that you just want to know the answer to why that happened, and you were fortunate enough to find it very quickly after you stop playing. It took me, as I said, as I got down that rabbit hole of neuroscience and putting, it took me about 7 to 10 years before I really had a handle on it. And even recently, and I haven't played professional. God, it's 17 years ago. I think I kind of packed up doing any of that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But even to this day, but I last year I started playing again and really probably putted as well as I ever did, and but still continue to learn. But now it's like I can finally close that door to say whatever it was back then. If I could transpose my putting to my game back then, I might be, playing at the tour event this week. Well, no, I wouldn't. I'm too old. I'd be at some Champions Tour event. I wouldn't be playing with the young guys. But it seems like there's a thing like that with people who are driven to say something got me, something got the best of me, no matter what I did, whether I didn't have the technology or it's the way I thought about it. But now I've got the answer. It has to have some satisfaction to you that you at least know that.
Oh yeah, I mean it's spilled into coaching for sure. Like I find now like most people they think the swing is the problem. The swing's not the problem. It's their misconception of the problem, like not truly understanding it, whether their vision's not calibrated right or they don't understand, what creates a start direction or what creates a curvature, and they're just, they're lost. Everything is a trial and error experiment without actually understanding what is their good.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like I was talking with a fairly skilled professional baseball player today who also golfs. And he's like, all right, no, yeah, this is the off season. I'm coming. I'm going to come. And I don't think I need to change my swing, though. I'm like, you almost certainly don't. He's like, okay, good. I'm like, yeah, odds are like when you miss it, you just don't understand what happens that causes that miss, which means then you don't truly know how to fix it. And even when you get it right, I don't know what I did right. And when I get it wrong, I don't know what was wrong about it. And like, what a horrible way to go through life in anything.
Yeah, you're throwing darts in the dark,
Yeah, pretty much.
and you're going to wear out your body trying to figure it out. I can attest to that.
Yeah.
I got tagged as almost being anti-tech when TrackMan was coming out, and what 15 some years ago when it was really starting to make a push. And I said, I'm not anti-tech at all. What I am anti is that the industry, meaning young assistants or coaches, are going to be pushed to use it as a default as opposed to learning the things that will contribute to what somebody's doing and use it as gathering information. And
Yep.
even talking to Scott Caux, and he uses a lot of hack motion. He's their ambassador and everything else. And I think in one of our episodes when he was on, he said he will use it, whatever tech he's using at the time. He'll use it to check where get like a baseline measurement of where that person is in that lesson, and then he'll use his expertise and his tools at his disposal from years of doing it, and then he'll use the technology to check after they've had some time to work on it during the lesson to see what advancements have been made, and then he can show that to the person. So I think as far as young coaches, they will gravitate, which was my concern many years ago, is young coaches will gravitate towards simply using tech, and they won't learn the things that will allow them to make students have a change. They'll just simply say you need to swing more out to in because you're too much into out. Well, no
Yeah.
shit.
How? Yeah.
Yeah, how?
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me, he was a young kid at the time working for me. Was a pretty good young teacher, good player, James Skripek. James, I wonder if you remember this one. So, Um, he got a job interview for his first director of instruction position. I think it was at Deer Ridge, a nice private club in like Kitchener or something, an hour and a bit from town. He came up to me all excited. He's like, Liam, I got, I'm down to the final interview. I got to give a golf lesson to the GM and the director of golf. Can I borrow one of the TrackMan? I'm like, no. And the look on his face was like, oh my God, well, how do I give a lesson without like, but I've given every lesson with this, and of course, like he ended up a good teacher. He knows the shit. He got the job and he's, done very well for himself, still a good player and all that kind of stuff. But, yeah, it was interesting. I think there is a generation out there that is, just coached to a number type
Mm-hmm.
thing. Um, and certain times there's a time and a place for that. I think that there is definitely a time and a place to set up a launch monitor and only show the person, one single number and let them go dig it out the dirt and not give them any direction and, fail and try again and solve problems and build strategies. But yeah, I think I'm trying to remember, I can't remember. McCormick put it a great way one time. I think he said he wanted to be, I don't know, data informed and not necessarily be too data driven,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was kind of an interesting way to put it. I find myself telling people like, look, the technology doesn't tell you what to do; it only tells you what happened. You still got a
Yeah,
coach. You're just going to use technology to prove to people that you actually know what they're doing. And even though that felt weird, it is what they want.
yeah, absolutely. It quantifies. I think quantifiable is the thing that the word
Yep.
that I've used, that has been used quite a bit to describe the benefit to the student. Because again, if we go back to the very, very successful people, they're going to say, well, how do you know?
Yep.
A head of a Fortune 50 company is going to have metrics that they're basing decisions on because you're moving a whole ship. It's not easy
Yep.
to move a whole ship. And if you're going to tell them to do something, okay, I'll do this. I'll listen, but you got to tell me why.
Yeah, I love to joke around saying like it's nice to be in a day and age where we don't ever have to say trust me. Yeah,
No kidding.
yeah,
You got a little time left. You got emergency 9 questions we can run through.
sure, let's do it.
All right. These are always fun. I tell everybody, first and last one are always the same for everybody. So in almost 5 years of doing this, I think the first and last have been the same, and then the ones in the
All
middle will
right,
kind of change up from time to time. So
perfect.
you're going to you make the President's Cup team. You have the itch to play a little bit. You go win a Canadian Tour event and you play really well, and they say,
Yep.
"Damn, Liam, we're going to select you for the President's Cup." You're walking up to the first tee. What song are you going to have them crank?
Probably Ride the Lightning by Metallica. Scientifically proven to increase club head speed. I'm going full send mode. Yeah, fuck it.
Perfect.
I got a partner, right? It's day one.
Let's see. Hollywood. They have watched your career. They have followed you, and they're very impressed. And they come to you and said, "Liam, we're going to make a movie about your life, and we're going to let you cast any actor that you want to play the role of you." Who are you going to have them? What actor are you
Um,
going to have them call?
I probably have him go with Ewan McGregor as Rowan Atkinson behaviorally.
This one I'm interested to hear your answer because you get to play with so many cool toys. But I had to put some kind of parameters on this one. So the best purchase of, and it could be anything that you've made in the last year for under $1,000.
Like golf coaching or just anything in
Whatever,
general.
anything in general. Could be golf coaching, could be anything in general. So something that's interesting.
Trying to think of what I use every day. Um, Probably, honestly, it's probably this, this Peak Design case and random like phone tools for shooting videos and getting better pictures and stuff in different ways.
Cool. Well, that's your craft. I mean, it makes a lot of sense that would be
Yeah.
something. All right. Let's see. You've got 24 hours to make a hole in one, and if you make it, you get $5 million. If you don't get to play golf ever again. So
Yep.
you're doing it.
Absolutely. Not even a question. 100%. I'm going to 177 yards as well.
Let's see. Any franchise, any restaurant or fast food chain franchise that you could stick in your kitchen, who's it going to be?
In and out.
That's a common one.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely In and Out
I
Burger.
think they got some bad press when Tiger got sick. That the
Yeah.
day before he's eating at In and Out, and those guys got caught some shit that they probably didn't deserve.
Yeah, no
Uh,
doubt.
your favorite golf movie?
Ooh. Um, it's probably Caddyshack. Caddyshack's mine, but I think just because my kid was into it, the greatest game ever played. So like he loved that, so I like watching that with him.
That's actually a newer one in the last couple of months, and the The answers have been all across the board. There is nothing that has stood out as the clear favorite on that one. I found that one interesting.
Yeah, no doubt that is.
Let's see. Most annoying thing when you're playing, there's people texting, slow play, or aeration of greens.
Oof. As much as I hate aerated greens, if I I'll go slow play. Like,
Yeah, it can irritate the hell out of you.
yeah, that would be the biggest reason why I don't play. Is like, when I'd play up at King Valley and I'd be on like I'd go play with a buddy of mine. We had the golf boards, like those kind of surfboards you ride around. We'd get 18 holes done in under an hour and 20 minutes.
Wow.
But like, I mean, why am I gonna waste time with a practice swing? I've swung like a million times. Like, just hit it already.
It's not going to be that big a difference.
Yeah, like the first ever tour event that I played, I qualified for a Canadian tour event at my home course, and I'm grinding. Of course, I almost shank it off the first tee. I got like the 6-footer for bogey. Probably read it 9 different times. Naturally miss it. My old man is a PhD in sports psychology, and we're walking to the next hole. It's like, son, you're only thinking about missing it. There's only one way for it to go in, so you should just step up and do it. I'm like, oh, fuck you, Dad. But he's right. Not the best timing to deliver some good information, but I mean, really, like, there's one way to make a putt. You hit it in the goddamn hole. If you're standing there thinking about it, you're literally only thinking about ways to miss it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So
Timing on that one for your dad wasn't the best. Maybe a few hours after the round would have been better.
yeah.
Let's see. A couple more. Would you rather play Augusta National or get tickets for life?
Play it once. Yeah, I don't have the time to go there every year.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I'd rather just play it.
And then the last one, in your opinion, as far as golf is concerned, who's the GOAT? Who's the greatest of all time?
I don't know. I don't. I'm literally trying not for this to be a cop out answer, but I don't think there's ways that we can gauge that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously, yeah, you can go in tournaments and you can get in depth of field crap and all of that sort of stuff. I think, I think there's been a few different generational talents that have had the biggest impact in the game. Arnie, Jack, Tiger, each brought something unique that the others didn't bring. I think that each one of them should probably be respected for that. And if you really want to go down, particularly with golf, you really want to go down the road of deciding who's the GOAT, I think it needs to be segregated based on equipment.
That's an interesting point. It makes sense too.
Yeah, like it's just it's so different. And that also goes for, like if you said like, well, who's the best driver of the golf ball? Okay, well, to me it's exponentially less impressive to be a great driver of the golf ball now. I'd say Tiger's in the conversation back when he was using like, early new premium golf balls, like Titleist Professional or whatever, and doing it with, 9-degree King Cobra driver.
Mm-hmm.
I think the skill that it took for Norman to do what he did with a Persimmon driver and Balata ball trumps anything I've ever seen. So like, yeah, I'm actually not very impressed by Rory. Not saying he's not good, but like 180 something ball speed, big deal. Like, dude, you play golf for a living. You should hit it that fucking hard. All you have to do is work out and hit golf balls.
You've played since you could stand.
And you got all these, ridiculous technology and all that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I mean, you guys should be probably that good at driving the golf ball.
I think that Brandel had posted a statistic, and I could get this wrong, but it's something to the effect of the one year that Nicklaus was either number 1 in accuracy and number 3 in accuracy, number 1 in driving, or something very close. And I always wonder why his swing was never copied more or taught more if somebody can be that proficient and hit it that long with their driver. But it never was.
No,
that would be a whole topic for another show.
Yeah, Yeah, I guess no one ever really liked to cross the line. I don't know.
What do you have? You have anything coming up? You speaking somewhere? You got something coming out? You
Uh,
tell everybody about?
yeah, I've got nothing in the next little bit over here in North America. Doing a run through Japan and Korea. Doing some ground force talks for swing catalysts. That'll be fun stuff. Um, then back to Southeast Asia again in May, and then it'll be fall time with a little run through Europe. So
Fun.
yeah, yeah. When summertime hits here in the northern hemisphere, especially North America, for the most part, a lot of the presentations and seminars shut down because people are taking lessons and
You got
coaches
other
are
stuff to
giving
do.
them. Yep, that's it.
Cool. I will have I'll have all your social media stuff for you and the golf lab. It's in the summary, but go ahead and tell everyone where they can follow what you guys are doing, all the cool stuff.
Yeah, at the Golf Lab on Instagram, mygolflab.ca, on, is our website, facebook.com/the golf lab, youtube.com/the golf lab. If you're, bored and want to go down some rabbit holes, I like to think that ours are not going to damage your golf swing, because we're probably not going to talk to you about the golf swing. We're just going to talk about research and, the perils of online lessons.
Hmm.
They're not personalized and directed to you.
Very cool. Very effective and efficient. Was my impression of the stuff that you guys have, and very good. I highly recommend people get on there. Again, they'll be like we always have in the summary, one click. You can check out all the cool things that Liam and his staff are doing, and follow and sign up if they're interested in lessons and becoming a coaching certified coach or anything like that. You can do that through the website. Is that correct?
Yep. Yep. We actually just launched our third certification program, Club Building. So we've got Golf Engineer, which is, all about the technology from, how it works and the difference between inertial sensors and electromagnetic and optical, and pressure versus force and optical versus radar launch monitors and all that, geeky stuff that people love. Club Fitting one just shares all of our club fitting research, gets people access to our club blueprint index. That's, you may have seen where, you get to see the actual under the hood specs of drivers, the things manufacturers don't share with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Highly useful for club fitters and golf geeks alike. And
Very
then, yeah,
cool.
now finally with club building, so, you'll know how to put it together the right way.
Awesome. I can't thank you enough for coming on. I burned way over the time that I was supposed to, as I usually do. I hope I
Yeah,
didn't irritate the hell out of you and bug you,
no,
but
no
it was a
worries.
blast.
Appreciate appreciate the invite. Thanks for having me on and helping tell our stories.
Yeah, you're welcome to come anytime you want to. It's been a blast. There's a lot more we could have got into, but so we'll save that for another time.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, just hang out 1 second.